Hello, everybody. This is your host, Enot. Today we have a special guest, a nice Frenchman with an extensive experience in the field of software development. So, therefore, I will just introduce you my friend Benjamin Dumas, which has been working in IT industry for over 10 years. During his time spent in the IT industry, he has been working in different areas such as nuclear energy, aeronautics, and lately insurance. He has been experiencing different type of roles by mixing along the time software development with project management and DevOps practices. Nowadays, he lives here in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, after moving away from France. You can reach him anytime at Benjamin Dumas on LinkedIn. And also, I recommend if you like the interview to check it on YouTube, since we also captured this interview in a video format. This has been said, I just want to welcome Benjamin. Benjamin, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
I hope so. So, as I said, pretty much, you have been living in France most of your life, and then you decided to come to Sweden. What made you to move abroad and start a new life from scratch, I would say?
So yeah, I spent most of my life in France and in the same area in the southeast. I'm from Marseille, and I just move around Marseille basically. And since I was I finished my studies, I had this idea of moving abroad to just have different experience. But life made that it didn't happen at this time, so it was just an idea that was running in the background. And 1.5 years ago, that was the right time to do it. I didn't have any attachment left in France. Of course, my family is still there, but they will still be there when I come back.
Definitely, and you can visit them anytime.
Yeah, I'm trying to visit them as much as I can, but at the moment it's not really
not the right time. Maybe
right
after
time.
this pandemic, it's ending.
But so that was just to live a different experience and see different culture, and I think it's a good way to grow as a person, to experience different cultures and way of working and way of living. So that's how I end up in Sweden. Even though I didn't choose Sweden specifically, I just wanted to move from France. So I just tried to find a job in any country in Europe, basically. And just got an opportunity in Sweden, and
things happen.
Yeah,
It
why
says
not?
that you don't choose Sweden, it's choosing you.
Yeah, Sweden choose you.
So I'm curious about, since pretty much you moved here without having any relatives, without knowing no one here. How would you describe the first months? Because when you move abroad and you don't know anyone in that country, I think it's pretty hard until you build your network.
Yeah, actually, when I moved, I was prepared to spend at least 6 months quite lonely, the time to actually make some contact, either professional or on personal level. But I think I got some chance that I end up in a company that was really trying to make people meet each other, because they were hiring a lot of foreigners. So they were trying to enhance these meetings with everyone, so a lot of afterworks and activities so people can meet and enjoy. So I actually met a lot of people really, really fast. And also I have one of my friend that came from France a few weeks after I joined Sweden. I come to Sweden. So I had at least someone, but then I actually met a lot of people quite fast. And we created a small group of friends that just keep extending. So I didn't felt that lonely actually. And then on a professional level, everything went quite well. So in the first place, the people I met were my colleagues, but even though we were not working together because we were consultants, so different assignments. But then the first assignment I had in Sweden, also I made quite a lot of connection, and some people now are we're friends and we're
Yes.
seeing each other outside and this kind of thing. So that was not less difficult than expected actually.
So pretty much the working environment, I would say, has been facilitating a bit to meet new people, and then later on you just pretty much expand the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Since you mentioned like about the different kind of people from a lot of places, I'm curious, like, what do you see as the biggest cultural difference that you have noticed when you have moved from France here to Sweden?
If you're talking about like in the workplace, I would say that here there is less hierarchy compared to France. So you discuss more easily with like your managers and your colleagues, and even the manager of your manager. There is not so many like layers. Back in France, it's a bit more hierarchical. So of course you can talk to the manager of your manager, but not about important things, because then you will cross your own manager and you will not appreciate that. So that's one big difference in the way of working. Here also, that's something that strikes me quite fast, is that you can make a career in like being a technical person, where in France you can, but it seems like bit like, at least from my experience, a bit more difficult, and they kind of encourage you to go more into management. If you want to have a career. There is more openings in that area, but here you can focus more on technical stuff, and people are not like, oh, but yeah, you're not a manager, but so you can't like grow. But yeah, you can grow here in Sweden. Then like more on the personal aspect, I would say, like, yeah, the luck I had is that I met a lot of people from different countries.
Yeah.
And that kind of people, like being foreigners, they're like more open to meet people, to like have new friends or new connections and hang out with different people. Swedes are a bit more difficult to reach in the first place. Like when you finally reach to them and be friends with them, then like they're really, really nice. But
so a bit more hard to get.
Yeah, you have a gap that you need to fill. It takes some time.
I'm curious, like, besides the fact that you mentioned that one of the benefits is like you have less layers, so pretty much you can like have a more open and free discussion with your manager compared to France, and the fact that you seems to see like a bit more easier to have a technical career, not being forced to become a manager not by your choice. Do you see any drawbacks or like benefits here in Stockholm compared to France? Environment, company cultures, way of working, or like skills required in the market?
Like, yeah, also one big difference that I really appreciate actually is that in Sweden you have a better balance between work and personal life. So strangely, you hear like the standard contract is 40 hours a week, where in France it's supposed to be 35 hours a week, even if in reality it's not 35. But there is like you get some extra days off and these kind of things. But still, I felt I was working way more back in France and like making extra hours, but I didn't have like much flex time or like paid extra hours and these kind of things. Here in Sweden, everybody like really value that you have your own time. You can like go home not too late. You can maybe like go to the gym or like have some activities after work or meet some friends. Here it seems normal. Nobody will like pressure you to, oh no, you have not finished that yet. It's like really, really important. Like they are ready to accept that, okay, we have some difficulties, so we will just plan it, like take more time to do it, but we will not meet the deadline, but then we will like replan everything and make it work in different ways.
So that's like it's more like people centric from this point of aspect.
Yes, I would say.
Yeah, I think I feel the same. Like compared at least to my previous experiences here, I would say it's like a bit more laid back when it comes to work, and also it's more valuable the individual and the well-being of the individual itself. Yes, I totally agree with this one. I'm curious, like I want to go a bit more into like how do you see the other type of differences when it comes to rent, taxes, market demand, and these kind of areas?
So, yeah, compared to where I'm from, so I'm from the south, so like second largest city in France, or third, depends how you look at it. But like the rent,
Which is the city?
Marseille.
Marseille.
But then I was living in Aix-en-Provence, which is like 30 kilometers north from Marseille. But Aix-en-Provence is like a bit more expensive regarding rents compared to Marseille, except some neighborhood in Marseille. So it's still cheaper than Paris, that is the capital. And Stockholm is the capital. So definitely the rent is way more expensive here. And the market for renting an apartment is like really, really difficult in Stockholm.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
So yeah, here you put the money or you will have like really bad apartment. So yeah, in that aspect, I would say France might be better. Maybe not everywhere. Like in Paris, you will probably have kind of the same price range, even maybe higher than here in Stockholm. But then the salary is, for me at least, way better in Sweden than in France.
And this is coming from the tax perspective, or it's coming from the actual?
No, actually, like the salary itself
The salary itself.
higher, and like the brut gross salary. Sorry. Then regarding taxes, that's what something like a lot of people told me when I moved from France to Sweden. They're like, "Oh, but Sweden has like such a high tax like percentage." But I made some calculation when I was comparing my tax rate in France to the one I would have in Sweden before moving. So in Sweden, basically, when you're in Stockholm, it's like 30%, but that includes everything. So income and like local taxes and national taxes, everything is included. In France, it was a bit more difficult because you have like your income taxes and you pay it differently from your local taxes, and so you have like different, and when you add up everything, actually France is, the tax level is higher in France than in Sweden.
Like it's everywhere in France, or like Paris or Marseille? I don't know how the tax system works in France. That's why, I'm asking.
On the income, it's national, so everybody follow the same rules. Depends. You have different level, like different range. So like, let's say, if I remember, kind of like from 0 to 5,000 a year, or yeah, something like that, you don't pay anything. Then from 5,000 to something, you pay like 7%, and then like next layer,
so they also
like
use like some bracket
it's
system.
like, yeah, it's progressive. But that's the same rule everywhere that you live, in Paris, in Marseille, or wherever. Then the local taxes, that will depend the city you're living in. It could be like higher or lower, depends like the infrastructure and this kind of thing. So I guess Paris is probably higher than Marseille, and Marseille is still like quite expensive. So yeah.
And when it comes to, I would say, like market demand, at least in the IT field, how do you see it? Like, do you see more market demand over here in Sweden, or do you see like maybe the same or similar to compared to France?
I'm not completely sure. I think, yeah, there is still like in France when I left, they were kind of planning of a shortage of engineer and like technicians, and IT is like really, really high demand everywhere. But yeah, the market would be like maybe a bit different, where in France you kind of need to speak French. Like, there is not so many positions when you can just show up just speaking English.
So it has this kind of barrier. You have to speak French.
They will require from you to speak English, but they will require for you to speak French in the first place. Here in Sweden, at least, if you speak English, you can find a job. Maybe you might not reach all the position, because some companies still ask for like Swedish speaker, or like if you want to go in like higher position, you might have to speak Swedish, but you can really easily find something just speaking English. So maybe the market is a bit more broad in Sweden in that aspect. And yeah, to be honest, I didn't have that many issues to find jobs. So I had my first job, and then after 1 year, basically, I had like another opportunity. So I had another company, and then I had another one 6 months after that. So in 1.5 years, I changed 3 times.
Do you think like in France will be like maybe a bit different or like difficult compared to Sweden at least?
No, I don't
Taking
think
into consideration
no.
that you, by definition, you will speak French.
No, I think you will find easily in France too, because I'm still getting requests on LinkedIn, for example, from recruiter back in France. Like, oh, we have a
So you're
position
still
for you.
active. Yeah, that's great. And because do you see, or like, if you'll have to move again and have no complete experience with Sweden so far, what advices do you give to your like uh, the new ones who want to come to Sweden, or like what was the trickiest stuff that you have encountered when you have moved here?
It was actually quite simple. Being from European Union, you don't need a work permit, so you don't have a lot of administration to do. For Sweden, you just have kind of to show up, go to the tax agency with your contract, apply for this personal number, and then like ID card, and then you open a bank account, and that's pretty much it. So there was that was actually quite easy to move. The fact that in Sweden, and I guess it's the same for all Nordic countries, so either way in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, they all speak very good English, so you don't really need to speak the language.
Yeah, that's very true.
So it's kind of funny, because if you want to learn it, then you can find like hard way to learn, and there is like courses and schools and these kind of things. But then when you try to practice, they usually switch to English because they realize that you don't speak the language, so it's more difficult. But maybe that's the most difficult part in a way, to learn the language, because you don't get to practice that much, except if you know locals. But then from EU, I guess it's like really, really easy.
Yeah, that's completely true. When it comes to the difficulty to learn Swedish, is I would say it's good to have it, definitely, and can open new opportunities. But you can manage to live even without knowing the language. So that's the tricky part. And you have to say also, like, at least from my experience, when I came here, it was like a bit strange at the beginning until I got the card detail and the social security number. Because if you don't have that, pretty much you cannot do anything, not opening a bank account and nothing. And it was pretty tricky because I had to wait 2 months until I got my first salary over here.
Yeah, it was kind of the same for me. The like on paper, you just need this social security number, personal number, so that can go quite fast. For me, it took 1 month, but because we forgot to like check a box in my contract, so they sent me a letter for that, and in the meantime I went back to the tax agency and fixed it. So some small issues, and then on paper with that, that's enough to open a bank account, but in reality it's not. So then you need to apply for an ID card, so that will take 2 or 3 weeks to get an appointment, and then another like 2 weeks, maybe to get 1 week or 2 to get the card. Then when you have that, you can just basically go to any bank and open an account.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me it took around 2 months to get everything done. So maybe you need to have some savings to live on during at least 2 months. I had that, so that was not really a problem. And then you get the money back anyway when they pay you in the end. But
I think this at least the nice stuff, because when I came here after 1 year, I would say surprised, if I have to use like the correct word. When I had to complete my tax return, I got some actual money back from the government, which was like pretty nice experience, I would say.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, for me actually it was the same, and surprisingly it was really high the first year, and now this year it's like kind of back to normal. And I remember like first year I discussed with a lot of friends and colleagues that actually started in the same company at more or less the same time. And yeah, the tax return was quite different. Like for a few of them it was really high, and for most of them it was like a tenth of what I got. So that was kind of strange I didn't still understand how I paid that much extra taxes in a few months, because it was like just for the year I moved in, so for 2018, and I started working end of August, so from end of August to end of December, and yeah, that was a lot of tax return, but that was nice surprise.
Yeah. So I want to put you some questions also regarding the IT industry, and here more specific, since you have spent like quite a lot of years in the field so far. I'm curious, how do you see the IT industry and the software development has been changed over the years? Because at least from my experience, lately the market is shifting to different kind of technology and different kind of aspects. So I'm curious, like, how do you see this change compared to your experience?
In my experience, I would say that the pace of technology is getting just crazier and crazier. When I started, it was like already quite fast pace, but compared to today's, you have like framework out every day with new version, and you really need to like get yourself educated and look what's coming up and what's the new trends and how it works, and to keep up the pace. Otherwise you would be outdated in like no time. So you really need to focus on that and follow up and get yourself into all the new framework. I guess now you kind of have to specialize, where before, at least when I started, and it was just 10 years ago, it's not that long ago, but you could be like completely full stack, like really from the UI to the backend, and like you were managing kind of everything. Today, I guess you can't really do that. Being full stack today, I'm not sure you can pretend to be. Or at least you will have like some knowledge about everything, but you won't have deep knowledge about anything. So I guess it's better to kind of specialize in different area, and I think the one that are emerging right now, so a lot of cloud. It's not right now; it's been a few years, but cloud technologies are getting more and more common and more popular. Security, definitely, that's probably the biggest trend, because since you're hosting a lot of things in the cloud, everything is more open, and so you really have to have a strong security in your applications. So that's probably a good specialty. It's not my specialty, but it's probably a good one. And now there is also, I've seen a lot, big data, machine learning, AI. Then one may argue that we don't have real AI, and that it's just like some algorithm to solve problems and these kind of things and learn by themselves. But yeah, that's probably the next trend that is coming up.
So basically, you see, like, you have to be like try to go more specialized, and it might be quite difficult to be like a good generalist, I would say, to know everything.
Yeah, I guess so. I think specializing.
I'm curious about two things actually, since you mentioned it's about the trends, and curiously, how do you see the tech culture in France compared to Sweden? Is the same? It's following the same trends in IT?
I would say it's following the same trends, but my experience in France is kind of strange. I worked on a lot of projects with a lot of legacy code. So when I was working in the energy field, at some point working a lot on simulation code, and we had some Fortran, C, and not like modern C or C++, kind of old. But there was also some Python, because in simulation and like math and these kind of things, Python is like really to the place that Fortran had before. Then I also worked when was that? Like 3-4 years ago, but they were still using, for example, .NET 1, .NET 2, which is quite old. So where I was working, like not in Paris, I've seen a lot of old stuff, but from what I can see now on social media and so on, my previous company, at least, they are recruiting in new tech. So I guess, it's coming. From my experience, when I moved to Sweden, I think they are more up to speed and more keen on going on to the leading edge or bleeding edge technologies. Now, definitely my position right now, I'm working in a company that's doing cloud consulting on Azure specifically. They're not targeting any other cloud provider. So they are always really on the edge, and so not pushing for previous stuff that are not stable and might be abandoned in the future, but at least they have assignment and work on leading technology.
Since you mentioned about the fact that you work in this company as a consultant, I'm curious, like, there are any differences between the IT consultancy in Sweden and in France, or is like pretty much following the same process of like picking the projects and delivering the end result?
I would say there is quite some differences. Here in Sweden, it's more the customer will pay for a resource for a certain amount of time, and you will do whatever they want you to do and what you can do during this time. So you're just manpower or womanpower for that customer, and you don't have to deliver something in the end. You will deliver all along your assignment until it's done. They can extend it if they need to extend it, or when you're done, you're done. In France, it's more the customer will say, we need this solution in the end that works. What's your proposal for that? So you will make you will actually make an offer, a proposal for this solution, how much it will cost, and how you planning to manage it and deliver it in time. But then it's not really the customer business, how you're gonna handle it. So you can put anyone you want. If you need to put more people on the project, you will put more people. If you manage to do it actually in less time, but they agreed, they don't need to know. But usually in France now, this way of working bring a different kind of game. Is that all the consultancy company, they're trying to lower the cost as much as possible, and then maybe go into negotiation to when something is not really compliant with the initial requirement, or when there is room for negotiation, they will try to get like extra money on that, extra budget. But in the end, you just have, let's say, 6 months to deliver that solution. Doesn't matter how you handle it, but you just have to deliver something in the end. Here, it's just like consultant by consultant. Okay, you will take 3 consultants for 6 months, and you will make them whatever you want. And in the end, we'll see if you want to extend that or not. So it's different.
Do you see like any benefits of like going actually to the fact that you just take the whole project and you deliver it, versus the fact that you just hire one consultant to do a specific job in the client company?
From the management point of view, when I was doing project management back in France, like just kind of renting resources to a customer, you are sure about the profit you will make, because you know that you will sell one consultant for that amount a day, and you know that that consultant costs you that amount a day. So in the end, you know you will not lose money.
So it's more like predictable.
Yeah. But usually, at least in Sweden, doesn't seem to be the case. But in France, that model, of course, you have like stable profit, but not that high. And when you deliver a solution in the end, then you can leverage different thing in the project. Maybe start with more senior to like build the foundation of your project or of your solution, and then bring in maybe more junior people that will just code over the foundation. And by playing like that, you can actually increase your profit in the end. But then you get more risks. Because if something goes wrong and then you need to put more people or you go over the deadline, then maybe you will have to pay some penalties. And so so you take more risk, but in the end, if you manage it correctly, you can get more profit.
So as I understand, basically, like if you're willing to take more risk, you can like forecast the higher profit from the project itself compared to the model where you just hire consultants one by one.
That's actually when we were working on proposal for customer, we were making some assumption like, okay, if we start with this kind of team, what kind of profit we will make compared to what we have said. Okay, if we manage to like do it in less time, how much profit can we make? If we put more junior, or if we put just senior at the beginning and then we replace them by junior, and like trying to see what would be the best setup for the team to make more profit. But that's just assumptions and hypothesis. Then usually the reality strikes at some point.
From my understanding, as it seems like pretty much then you can leverage more the knowledge of experienced project manager in this kind of projects where you just pretty much take the whole project. Because then as you said, like you can change a bit like who is working on the project, the experience level, and focusing on having a good and to deliver the result on the due date.
That model actually has also one benefit, is that you can hire junior and make them learn like alongside with more senior developers and architects and project manager and so on. Where here in Sweden, for having some friends that are junior, it seems a bit more difficult because customers, since they are just sub-renting consultant, they expect people with more experience, and they're not really afraid to pay more, but they want people with experience. So when you're junior, it seems to be a bit more difficult to find a job in Sweden.
So maybe it's not the perfect market for this kind of fit, at least.
You can find, but I guess it's a bit more difficult. With the model, the most common model we have in France, it's easier. They hire junior all the time because they're trying to lower the salaries they are paying on the project, the cost on the project, and make more profit like this. But it's also a good way of training. It's profit, but it's also training people from when they're out of school and make them like build them for your company, the way of working, the way you are working.
So it's more like room for internal growth, I would say. Yeah, great. Since you spoke about like and we shifted a bit to the project management side, I'm curious, like, so you have been working as a developer, then a project manager, and now a DevOps. And I'm curious, like, how do you see the challenges, or like what obstacles have you had in each one of them?
Well, like as a developer, it was more or less keeping up the pace with technology and keeping like good code quality and all that. But back then I was doing a lot of fat client and like full stack, so from really backend to UI. But then, as I said earlier, in France, if you want to make a career, you kind of have to go into some kind of management. You can be like more in tech lead and these kind of things, but project management was something that at the time was really appealing to me, because I liked the aspect where you spend a lot of time with your customer, trying to understand the requirements, discussing ideas, and trying to understand the business and then translate it for the team that will develop it. So that's why I wanted to go that way. And I got the opportunity, so I just took it. Then, yeah, the way the model is in France, then it's where it becomes more difficult as a project manager, is that you need to constantly calculate your profit and loss on especially I was working on maintenance projects, so we didn't develop from scratch application. We had to maintain like code base and bug fixing and add some new features and this kind of thing. So we had a budget for bug fixing, and then we were making proposal every time for new features. But then you still need to have enough budget to cover the whole team. And that's where you start like calculating all the time, making sure that you have enough budget, that your team is not understaffed or like too big for the job. And so that's the aspect that I didn't like so much in the end.
So basically you have to have an eye all the time on like how do you balance everything in a project in order to make profit.
Exactly. So you have to take into account all your team salaries and all the fees that the company pays on the salary, because the company pays extra. It's not only what you get on your account. There is more than that. That and also all the expenses that the team may have. Most of the time we were at the customer, and we were working for a customer that was not in the city. It was like outside, so you have to take into account all the expenses of your team. That's I mean, it's interesting, but in the long run it's not that fun to do all the time.
So do you say like maybe it's a bit stressful? I would say, since you have to
it could be when the project is a bit financially in bad shape. Then you kind of you have to like try to find how you should reorganize the team, or maybe let some people from the team go, replace them with like more junior persons.
But do you see the stress higher than as a developer? Because also as a developer, I think you have some kind of stress, like you want to deliver a good code, you want to deliver on time, and
I think
so
it's
on.
kind of the same pressure, but different layer, because the pressure that the project manager will have, usually it will fall back on the developer at some point, because the project manager would say, oh, we're not going to make profit this month if we don't reach the deadline. So he's going to probably pressure the developer to deliver faster. And or you can also have the same thing with quality. Because it doesn't mean that you're not delivering on time, but if every time you deliver something, the customer says, no, it's not working, I can't accept that, so you have to rework. So you will have to spend more days, and that will end up... That might... Actually, we had project with penalties when we had too much delivery that were not compliant with the quality that they... were expecting, or if we were delivering too late, so they could actually ask us money instead of paying us, or at least paying us less. So that aspect could be stressful, and that usually fall back on the team. I know that I was trying to keep the team safe from stress, but probably they were feeling it anyway.
Sometimes you cannot take everything, I would say.
No.
But I think it's interesting because like if you are just as a developer, you're not aware all the time about this kind of extra stuff that you have to be aware. And since you step in the project management position, I would say like pretty much it's interesting that you have developed some sort of new skills, and you have been aware of what actually the IT industry means and what's the step that you have to do in order to deliver a project, not just the code part itself.
Yeah. That actually broaden your vision of like a project, because there is more than just coding and delivering. I know that actually I was trying to get my team updated on this kind of aspects too, so they actually knew also what was behind the scenes, and so they can be more get more implication in the project, because they can understand that but sometimes some people at least think that it's not their problem, so they don't really need to take care of that. They will just do their job, and that's the project manager to deal with that.
I'm curious, like, if because you said that you didn't like all the time the pressure that you had as a project manager, if you would have to be a developer, would you step into project management if you could like achieve more and grow more in the development? Have you think about that? Like, if you go back a bit in time and before doing the actual change to developer to manager.
Well, you will just have the pressure from different, like when you're a developer, it's usually your project manager that will pressure you to deliver what you need. When you're project manager, it's usually the way it was in France, since it's like so layered, you will have a project director, which is a project manager of project managers. So he will come back to you and ask for why.
It's like a domino.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, and above that person there was like a domain like director kind of, and above that there was like business unit directors and so on and so on. So it was quite layered, even though the company at the time was saying that no, you just have one boss, it's the business unit manager, or the other people is just, they're not your boss, they're just different position, but still they will ask you to be accountable for some stuff that you have to do and so on. So you still have this layer.
So I'm curious about, since we discussed why did you change the development to a management position, and I'm curious, like, what made you to change from project manager to DevOps when you arrived in Sweden?
Well, like everything related to when I moved to Sweden, everything is completely random, but that's the beauty of it. So when I moved to Sweden, I still had this career path for me that was to continue in project management, and I was hired as a technical project manager, so not really only management but more with technical part. But in the end, my first assignment for an insurance company was working into their CI/CD pipelines. Basically, they had a really old tool that they had a custom tool for deploying applications, but there was no support for that anymore. So they moved to TFS from Microsoft. So no cloud, just on-prem. And I just started working in setting up build definitions and release definition in TFS, working with that, and then we grew like a small ecosystem around that, like artifact repository, and trying to have some Gits because they were still using TFVC. But then I put my hands back into some technical stuff, so helping the development team to understand why their build was failing in the central build server, how to deploy, and all the steps they have to make to deploy completely the application and just not move the files from the build server to the target server, but actually install the application, make it run. So I went back to technical aspects, not so much coding, but just understanding of how code works, quite some scripting. And actually I just enjoyed it. So since I was in Microsoft Technologies with TFS, I start looking into the cloud version, so Azure DevOps, just as curiosity, and then from there, like more into the cloud itself, so Azure. Then why Azure and Microsoft? Just because I started with that. I guess you can enjoy the same with AWS or Google Cloud. But on the career perspective, I was looking a bit at the different cloud provider, and AWS is still the major one, but Azure is not so far behind now, and the popularity growing. I guess it's a good time to specialize in this one, because there is a lot of people doing AWS, but less in Azure. So I kept learning, and since in Sweden you can actually achieve a good career being technical, I was like, okay, I kind of enjoyed that more than being a project manager at the moment. So let's go for
So
that.
you just took this this new path.
It's just opportunities and feeling the wind and going with it.
Great. Before going further to more technical details and aspects, I still have some questions, and I want to get your point of view on the management part of it, since like you're still on this topic somehow. So I'm curious, like if you will have to give some advices for someone who wants to make the same kind of changes, going from software developer to project manager, or from project manager to DevOps. What tips or like what advices would you give, or like where they have to pay attention?
Going to project management, it could be really interesting, but you have to understand also that when you get into management position, it's also a bit, you kind of change the layer you are. So the team will perceive you a bit differently. So yeah, you will have to manage them. So you can't be their friend all the time. So that's also something that can be tricky, especially if you're moving to management position within the team you were a developer before. So that could be a bit tricky to actually remind some of your team members that now they have to listen to you and do what you're asking. Then I guess it depends also the different cultures. I guess here in Sweden it's probably kind of fine because they are usually not really pushing the decision but asking everyone to make a decision and that everyone agrees on that decision. In France you kind of have to more push, like that's my final decision, so now you have to do it. It's your job to do what I say. So that could be a bit tricky and make you a bit more lonely in your team sometimes. Then you really have to measure everything. That's something you don't see much in Sweden because the model is more that you're renting people, and then I guess even if you're a consultant and you're a project manager, it's your customer that will handle the budgets and you will just have to deal with it. When you actually have to deliver a solution for a fixed price, then you really have to manage. So you have to be ready to measure everything, the performance of your team, and how much they can deliver in each sprint if you're working agile or all along the project. So you have to measure everything. So it's not just going and telling people what to do. You actually have to have metrics to know what people should do to improve or to
KPIs or something like this, right?
Yeah, you need a lot of KPIs. And a lot of planification. So you have to make plannings.
I'm curious here also, since you mentioned that like if you have the possibility to become a manager within the same team that you have been developing before, how do you see the process? Because I'm curious, like as a developer, maybe you want to ask for a salary increase or something like this. So how would you approach now, since you have become a manager, how will you approach the salary discussion? And here I'm curious, how have you approached these type of situations when you have been in France?
I didn't. I was not promoted within the same team. So when I moved from developer to project manager, I actually changed completely project, customer, and everything. So I didn't face this thing. But since I was still young and still junior, because I had 3 years of experience when I moved from developer to project manager, the way it has been handled by my former company is that they put me as a project manager with kind of on probation, but I had a tutor to mentor me and show me the ropes and
give you some guidance.
Yeah, and actually that mentor was more the one accountable for the well-being of the project than me, but he was guiding me and I was doing the job, but he was the person that the business unit manager was checking with for seeing if everything was fine or not. So we didn't really discuss like straight away because it was just on probation, and if it was not working, then I would be back to being a developer again and try my chance another time. But in the end, that went quite well, and I actually didn't have to ask that much, and I just got like raise. In this company, they were trying to promote junior, so we had a chance to get a raise every 6 months, and for many years I got something every 6 months, so that was kind of fine. But definitely if they give you the opportunity to really move, you should discuss salary, and of course because you have more responsibilities, so
sometimes it can be tricky, I would say. I'm curious also, like, since you're on this aspect, what non-technical or like soft skills do you value more on a developer? And here it comes, like, since you had this experience like as a project manager, what do you find like useful, like good skills to have?
You mean in the team members, in your developers?
Yes, exactly. On the technical side, I mean.
I think they still need to be, probably one of the things that is the most important is that they are team players. They are not individuals working only on their own, because every project, even though you can have specific task, you have to develop that, what should be the input and what should be the output. I think you really need to understand why you are doing it and how it will fit in the global solution. So for that, you still need to understand what your colleagues are doing, what the whole solution is supposed to do in the end, so you know what your piece of software is actually going to help with. So being open-minded, trying to be curious about what you're doing, trying to understand the purpose of it, and then of course being a team player and like helping your colleagues if they need, and of course ask for help if you're stuck. A lot of people, like, of course it's always nice when you have like a technical issue that you manage to solve it by yourself, but when you're working, when you're doing on your own project at home, for sure, but when you're working and you have to deliver something, you can look and try to of course you have to look and search and try to understand and try to fix it, but if you can't, maybe ask for an extra pair of eyes to look at your code or at your issue. And communication skill within team, being a team player and being curious about why you are doing what you're doing.
So you have to say, like, pretty much have to be approachable, if I have to like put in a word, and try to see the greater scope as like delivering the project.
You need to see the big picture, and being approachable and be social.
I'm curious, have you ever had like some sort of like conflicts between the team players, or was not the case?
I had one project where in the end, but I realized that a bit too late, but we had a toxic team member that at the beginning seems really like nice and working, trying to understand, trying to help others, trying to provide solution, but like in the long run, and after, I realized that way after, that team member was actually could ask for more responsibilities, but when you give that person more responsibility, then but now I have too much to do, I can't do that, and like trying to just throw back the stuff on you or on someone else, and also talking behind the back of people, and and then that creates a toxic environment, and then the team is the well-being of the team is like degrading all the time, and that will have an impact on deliveries, on the quality, and so on, and then the customer will not be happy, and then the team will go against the customer and the customer will go against the team, and then you're kind of stuck in between all that and trying to soothe everything and mitigate the issues. And so from the project manager perspective, one of the best skill is to be able to read people and read people personality, and that's really not easy because some people really hide.
Do you think that like if you pay attention on the individual's level, you can solve the problems by, I don't know, like giving them like, hey, I just noticed this, are you aware of doing this or that? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I guess like
or sometimes maybe it's just it's not the fit over there.
No, I guess most of the time giving feedback to people and telling them, I've noticed that you're doing this that way and it's not good because of, and explaining why and trying to find a solution with them. Or if it's like not the first time you're telling them, then maybe try to be a bit more pushy. And if it doesn't work, it might sound a bit harsh, but get rid of the person from the team. Doesn't mean fire the person, but at least that person can go and work on a different project. Maybe that would be a better fit somewhere else. But
good. I'm curious about one thing. Like, since you work as a DevOps, do you find it applicable, or the knowledge that you had before as a project manager within the DevOps scope?
Yeah, I think so, because in the end, working in DevOps, you kind of make the link between development teams and operations. And before it was, as project managers, like between your development teams and your customers. So you're always this link between different groups that speak different languages. So trying to have an understanding of the way each part is thinking, what is their main consideration and what they actually want to achieve, because it's different, especially in DevOps, where the team wants to push changes all the time, and where operation wants to keep the server stable and don't change anything because it's working, so we don't want to break it. So if you understand what everybody needs, then you can try to translate it in a way for the other one to make them understand, like, they have this consideration, that's why you can't do it like this, but we can try to find a way. And that's this dialogue that you can have with different perspective that I find interesting. There is similarities between being a project manager and DevOps.
So then pretty much you find it quite useful and applicable to have this kind of a priori knowledge about management. I'm curious, like, since pretty much you said that you're specialized right now in Microsoft Azure as a cloud provider, why did you pick Microsoft and all the other ones? Or what benefits do you see as working with Microsoft as a cloud provider?
I started with Microsoft because I started working with TFS, which is Microsoft, and then I went to see the cloud version, and then you start looking in Azure DevOps, then you say, but how it works when you try to deploy application in Azure. So that's what I focused on. And then, it's just that the market is like really growing in Azure. So I thought it was a good career path to take this one. I had a few courses in AWS. I guess from what I've seen, at least, it's pretty much the same. But no, I think it's kind of weird from Microsoft because they are used to, in the past, being really, really centric on their own technology. And if you want to do Microsoft, you do Microsoft all the way. And since a few years, they really opened that. So I really like that aspect also with Azure, that you can also connect to AWS if you have assets there, or to Google, or to whatever cloud provider working on-prem in the cloud and using Linux, Windows, building Java application or .NET application or Python. So I guess you can do pretty much the same with AWS and Google Cloud.
So also then the openness, let's say, since Satya Nadella came to the steer.
I think that's when it changed.
Yeah. So then it's like the openness of the new way of Microsoft is seeing the things pretty much.
Yeah.
It's also like important, I'm curious, like, so pretty much from your perspective, what are the most I would say required skills nowadays when it comes to the DevOps practices? Like, from your perspective, what do you use, or like what do you find useful to know as a DevOps?
Yeah, you need to have you need to have at least some skills in in development, understanding how code works, and especially now modern code that is distributed and that is based on a lot of components, like a lot of packages, and also operations, because that's the other side of DevOps. So I was not really an expert in operation, but also when I was on some project in France as project manager, we had to do deployments, but we didn't have pipelines, we didn't have automation. It was just writing down install procedures, and we had a lot of issues because of that. So I spent quite a lot of time with the operation guy trying to like troubleshoot why the application was not installing properly, and so I was getting some knowledge about operation, not in big scale, but some information. And then my assignments I had when I moved to Sweden, I also had to talk a lot with the operation teams, and the scale was higher, so I had to like make some research and build some knowledge on
to like step up and do your homework pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And but it's kind of fascinating too. That's why I like this DevOps practices. It's kind of fascinating to see, okay, I have this code, this application that works, and then understanding how you will actually deploy it and make it work, and the way it's gonna fit in, because usually it's just a piece of a bigger solution.
Actually, now if I'm thinking, like, I think, but maybe just my opinion, here in Sweden now, like in the Nordics, I'm seeing like more demand compared to different countries when it comes to the cloud knowledge in general. I mean, because all the companies, at least how the market is structured, they have a lack of DevOps knowledge. So now, as from my point of view, I'm seeing that there are like a lot of requests in this area of having cloud expertise.
When I look at LinkedIn, I receive like every day this we have found like that many jobs for that fits your profile, and there is really a big demand in cloud and DevOps. It's at least in the Nordic countries. I don't know, not sure in the rest of Europe or in France, but they are really trying. I think they really understand, or at least they pretend that they understood
the benefits,
that they need to have automation. Then they kind of also put the word DevOps in a lot of, maybe they are not using it completely the correct way, because they are still, at least that was the case on my assignment in Sweden, still a bit scared to have a fully automated pipeline that deploys until production. So they always have kind of some manual steps in between, just to lift from one test environment to higher one until production, not to actually do in manual installation, but they still have some fears about that.
I'm curious about one thing, because like you took a couple of certifications when it comes to Microsoft Azure. Like, how did you manage to take them so fast, and how did you structure the way of learning and to pretty much get them in a short amount of time, I would say?
Well, My goal, because I don't have that much experience in DevOps and in cloud, so to get some legitimacy, I wanted to have certification, so at least I can pretend that I know stuff in the cloud and in Azure DevOps. And my goal was to have the Azure DevOps one. So that one was actually not the most difficult, even if it's the expert level in the Microsoft certification. But since I've been spending 1.5 years working with TFS, which is pretty much Azure DevOps, I didn't feel like that I need to learn a lot. There is other aspects for the certification. There is not only the pipelines, but so my way of structuring that, I went step by step. I started with the fundamentals, which is not mandatory, but that was kind of, okay, I can make it, see if I can get this one. So fundamentals, just went through Microsoft Learn, and we have the chance in Stockholm that Microsoft has an office here, and they are actually organizing free events quite often. And there was one for just going through Azure fundamentals and explaining all the cloud principles.
So like a preparation.
Yes. And it's one day. So I asked my boss at the time if I could go. It was for free. So he said, like, of course you can go, no problem. So that was the first step. Then the second one was, for me, the most difficult. I had to spend more time preparing. It was the Azure administrator, because then you need to have a deeper understanding how it works and how to administrate the cloud and how to work with it.
It's like you have to dive deep.
Yeah. So this one, I kind of spend more time preparing it. I was actually not sure at all when I went and I did it. Even when I went out, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna pass or not, but I passed. And then the DevOps one, I still study.
Great. So now I have a question for you, as we're going to end this podcast. I'm curious, like, would you consider pursuing a nomad developer life, or do you want to pretty much settle down here in Sweden? What's your thoughts about this?
Nomad, not all the time, I would say, because actually I'm surprised, because right now we have this coronavirus crisis, and I'm working from home for a month now, and it's going pretty well actually. But I still miss going to the office, see your colleague, and having the opportunity to discuss your problem direct. Like I can do it today, like through Slack. There is a way, but it's easier when they are sitting next to you. You can just turn around and say, "Oh, you have these kind of issues. Did someone already face that?"
Yeah, it's a different kind of interaction, I would say.
So you will go to them like more often and more easily than online. But actually, I realized that it works pretty well, even online. So I was actually asking myself if I could just work remote from anywhere in the world. I think that could work, but I will miss this social interaction at some point.
So then, like, you value like having this kind of connection with the colleagues.
But that could be, now it could be more halfway. Like a few months ago, I would say no, like working from home from time to time, okay, but all the time, no. Now I could go like, spending a few months remote and then come back. That could work. That's actually.
If you will have to, I was like, to pick a different country than Sweden, what it will be? Still in Europe, or like think about changing the continent?
Actually, Europe, that could be also, because there is lots of nice places in Europe. But I choose Europe in the first place, the first time I moved abroad, because that was the easy way. Didn't have to get a visa or like a work permit. So that was the easy way. If I had to move again, that could maybe go further. So even before I was thinking, before moving to Sweden, I was thinking about Canada could be nice, but that's cold as Sweden. Australia could be nice, and my girlfriend would be really happy if I was going to Australia, and she will come with me. But yeah, I think I will see the day I move, but I will probably move someday again, because I grew so much as a person in 1.5 years just moving abroad, that I think I will have to redo this kind of experience, because if you haven't done that, do it, because it's really great.
Yeah, definitely. I would say like the experience of like moving abroad, it's changing the way you see the things most of the times, and it helps you to grow more.
Yes.
Yeah,
it opens your mind on a lot of things, and I would say it changed your perspective on the world and on a lot of things. So it's a great experience, and I would strongly recommend everyone to do that if they can.
Perfect, Benjamin. Thank you for being here and sharing some good thoughts and knowledge with all of us.
Thank
and
you.
I really hope to see you again, maybe on the next podcast.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Hopefully.